where the wild winds run, where the skies stretch wide and kiss the sun. The sagebrush whispers, the rivers hum. This land's a story just begun. Wyoming calls, where the heart beats free. Mountains rise and dreams run deep. Past the borders, past the sign, there's a world alive beyond the fence line. Boots hit gravel and the prairie sings. With every hoofbeat, the frontier rings. From ranchers' hands to miners' veins, the spirit of the West remains. Wyoming calls, where the heart beats free. Mountains rise and dreams run deep. Past the borders, past the sign, there's a world alive beyond the fence line. So come ride with me through the dust and time. Find the soul of Wyoming beyond the fence line, beyond the fence line. Beyond the fence line, beyond the fence
Welcome to Wyoming Beyond the Fence Line, where we step past the headlines and into the truth. This show isn't about left or right, it's about what's real in Wyoming, across the country, and around the world. No spin, no talking points, just facts, context, and honest conversation. If you're tired of being managed instead of informed, you're in the right place. Let's go beyond the fence line. And now, here is your host, Joseph Kibler, candidate for Wyoming Governor in 2026. Welcome to Wyoming.
Hey, good morning, folks. Just had to plug in my microphone here, and my light came on. Give me just a second here. I'm going to try to get my light back on. Otherwise, I'm going to be doing the show in the dark here. Hold on just a second. Well, gosh, that is not cooperating at all. Give me one second. I'm going to turn lights on here. So, I realized just a second ago, I'm like, wow, my microphone's not plugged in. Hey, good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday, February 18th, where we do world news on Tuesdays, right, guys? So with that, we're going to dive in, but I've got a little, I wanted to share a little bit of an encouraging word with you guys. There we go. My light is working now. I'll share a little bit of an encouraging word with you guys this morning before we get started. And so with that, it was kind of just, I have found myself, I was talking to a friend of mine last night. I found myself sort of just addicted to this idea, this doom scrolling in the news, right? Just there's so much going on in Wyoming, in the U.S., in the world, and you're trying to just kind of keep up with all of it. And at some point, you've got to step back and realize this probably isn't the best thing for me to be doing all of the time, right? Probably not the best for me to be doing is all this stuff that I'm doing. So, um, anyways, with that, uh, I'm going to just dive into some encouraging words I want with you guys, and this comes from John 16:33. These things I have spoken to you that you may have peace. In the world you may have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. I'm just reminded that in all of the things that we do and say, and whether it's politics or position or just whatever it is, that because of faith, he has overcome the world. And so with that, I'm going to dive into a couple more verses I wanted to share with you guys before I get into world news. Like, what in the world is going on, you guys? There is so much stuff going on that I've got to share with you. And I do this once in a while where I step away from Wyoming for just a second, just to share with you what's going on and what my perspective is on what's going on in the world. So I got a couple more verses I just wanted to encourage us with this morning before I dive into the news. And one of the things I was thinking about this morning too is, for in much wisdom there is much grief, but he who increases and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow. But that was written by King Solomon, wisest man in the world, from Ecclesiastes. But then he also says, I actually don't have that here, but he talks about how a house, the Proverbs actually talks about this. By wisdom, a house is built, and through understanding it is established, and through knowledge, its rooms are filled with rare and beautiful treasures. So, wisdom and knowledge building a house, and through understanding. I think we just have to be careful with that because there's so much spinning around. There's so much noise to keep track of and things to pay attention to, right? And I know this from Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. We know that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And so as we, kind of get into all of the world news and the craziness going on around us, we just be reminded, that God has overcome the world and that through wisdom we can build a house. Because we know that in Matthew it says every kingdom that is divided against itself will be brought to desolation, and every city or house divided against itself will not stand. I look around us here in Wyoming and around the world, and we are divided. We are more divided than ever, aren't we, guys? And so, one of the things that's on my heart, as I'm running for governor is, the Bible says, blessed are the peacemakers. And I know that may be kind of like tongue in cheek, but I truly want to be someone who is a peacemaker, someone who can bring people together and encourage others to do the same. And that's kind of always been on my heart. And so be encouraged this morning. Remember that he's overcome the world. And regardless of the good, the bad, the crazy news that we talk about today, that ultimately God has a plan, and this is part of his plan. And even though sometimes it's hard, difficult, confusing, unsure, that there's a lot of bigger things going on, things that we don't control, things that we can't control. So with that, I think I'll wrap this sort of encouraging moment or thought up with something that I think we need to talk about. And that is, we ought to all be able to speak plainly and confront evil. And we've got to be so careful that we're not exchanging evil for good and good for evil. And that we're able to talk truthfully about these things and stand for what is right, regardless of the noise and the stuff going on around us. And so that was just something I just wanted to share this morning before we get started into the news. I'm actually going to share a couple of like sort of just kind of like fun, like good news types of things. And then we're going to dive into some of the hot topics in the US and the world, the wars, the American fleets moving around the world, stuff like that. And I'm going to pull out a crystal ball about kind of what I think what's going on with the economy and where we're headed there too as well. So with that, a couple of things just wanted to mention real quick. Obviously, the Olympics are going on or have been going on here, the 2026 Winter Olympics, and America has gotten 6 gold, 10 silver, and 7 bronze. But we have 2 great Wyomingites who won some medals. So Breezy Johnson out of Jackson, Wyoming, won the gold medal for the women's downhill, and Jaylene Koff won out of Alta, Wyoming, won the silver medal in women's downhill moguls. So that's kind of cool. That's kind of exciting. A little Wyoming achievement there in the 2026 Winter Olympics. On to some other stuff that's kind of been positive that's going on. There are a lot of rule changes coming out of the EPA for automakers. This also, though, does affect our coal industry and perhaps opportunity and deregulation and stuff like that. So that's some other good news that's going on. Hot topic on Capitol Hill these days. You guys have all heard about the SAVE Act, which of course has been changed to the name Save America Act. And this is the voter ID legislation. Folks, this is just incredible that we cannot get this passed. To me, it's like, can they get anything done in Washington? I'm really, really starting to wonder, because this is cornerstone. Think about all the nations in the world that conduct elections that require voter ID and citizenship. We're one of the few nations that don't require these things, that don't require ID. It's weird because to me, you have to have this, right? There are like 900 things you have to have an ID for, right? I mean, you have to have an ID to buy alcohol. You have to have an ID to get cigarettes. You have to have an ID to get medicine. You have to have an ID to drive. You have to have an ID to get Medicare or Medi-Cal. You have to have an ID. I mean, you have to go down the list. Medicare, Medicaid, Medi-Cal, all the metas. Like, you have to have an ID for everything except voting. This is so weird. And so we need to get the Save America Act passed before the 2026 midterm elections. It's so important. So we need to keep an eye on that issue, you guys. Let's keep calling our representatives. Let's keep pushing to do that. What I'm concerned about at this point is I'm kind of curious. I wonder what backroom deals are being made right now so that we could get this passed. It's just I always kind of wonder, when they can't get something passed, what concessions are being made, probably on the back of taxpayers, to try to get this passed. I kind of always wonder that. We know that inflation kind of remains around 2.5%, folks. And, for the last year, we've been hearing about this idea, inflation, we've killed inflation. Inflation is low. Inflation is great. And all the policies are working. When you look at the actual facts, inflation's interesting, because when the Biden administration was done, inflation was right around those last couple months of 2024. Inflation was between 2.45 to 2.7%. We sit here today, 1 year later, and look at all of the economic changes. You've got tariffs and billions of dollars being, put into sort of just prop things up. And yet inflation has basically remained unchanged since 2024. To me, I want to make sure that we're just telling the truth to the American people. There are some indicators, right, that inflation is down in some ways and up in other ways. But a lot of this is driven, by government spending and a bunch of different factors. But my point is that we've done all of this economic work and inflation is remaining stubborn at 2.5%, which means, you guys, yes, it's lower than it was in 2022. That's obvious. But guys, the cost of our living still continues to go up. And I don't know about you guys, but our family is feeling the crunch. I mean, we're feeling the crunch at the grocery store. I mean, we're feeling the crunch everywhere, and I think we're all in the same boat, right? We're working hard. We're doing the things that we need to do to provide for our families. And those dollars are going less and less and less. You can't get as much as you used to. Utility bills are very expensive. Our winter bills are really expensive this year here in Cheyenne. And it's like this inflation stuff is stubborn, and it's not gone. Inflation's not gone. I think we know that on Main Street, right? We all know that. And so that's kind of an interesting thing to be thinking about. And another number came out this week, and this is something we all knew, right? All of us that are here on Main Street, we knew this is why, you guys, I struggle with any numbers that come out of the US government. Good numbers, bad numbers, indifferent numbers. I struggle with the numbers that come out of the US government, period. It's not unique to Trump. The Biden administration, Obama. I've always just gone, these numbers. It doesn't add up for me. It doesn't work for me. Not with what I'm seeing going on around me. And they revised the job numbers last year. They revised it down like 862,000 jobs. They were off. So somehow they got it wrong. And I think there are some estimates that say it's actually more like a million. So actually, they got the job numbers wrong last year by at least 800,000. Like, how do we trust our government when we know that they're constantly tweaking the numbers to give us a perspective that isn't based on truth? And so that's something that I kind of struggle with. So when it comes to like numbers coming out of the government, I like to question everything, and I like to look deeper into those numbers just to see like kind of what's going on. What's actually behind these numbers, whether it's inflation or GDP or all of these things. What's the truth? That's what I seek after. And I encourage you guys to do the same. Don't just read the headlines, whether it's world or US news. Actually, if you have time, actually try to seek after and dig in and look for the facts and go, wait a minute. This headline is deceiving me. This headline is misleading. And I really encourage you guys, we need to wake up as a culture, as a people, when it comes to just chasing the headlines and not really chasing after the truth. And so I find these things more interesting because I am a numbers person. I like numbers because I think numbers drive how so much of how government works and how economy works. And when we understand the numbers, it makes a difference on how we affect policy or how we talk about policy, because numbers are facts. When they're right, by the way. That's why I don't believe a lot of the numbers that come out of the US government, because a lot of times those numbers have been askew or they're not correct. And so it's interesting to see how some of these things continue to go on. And even when you look at the GDP numbers, which, we're all told is so great, why don't you guys look at and do some research on what's driving those numbers? One of the major factors is government spending, which we know is just out of control, right, you guys? So look at the facts. That's what I want to encourage you guys to do. This is something, and the next thing is something I kind of predicted last fall. I've talked about it a couple of times, not necessarily on the show, but I've talked about it, in brief videos and things like this. And this is the battle over tariffs and trade policies. And it was always my belief that last year the tariffs had not fully hit the US economy. And by the way, you guys saw the really strict tariff policies the first 6 months of last year. But then what started happening is certain things were beginning to get exempted from tariffs, right? They quietly exempted, small appliances for houses. They quietly then exempted like construction materials. They changed some tariffs, I think, for coffee and stuff like that, right? So they very quietly in the last half of last year started easing certain tariffs because it wasn't working, right? It wasn't working great for the American people and for the narrative. Although arguably perhaps a really good trade tool or arsenal or weapon that we could use as a country, but it's really not super working for the American people for a couple of reasons. So anyway, I said last year a couple of times, I believed that by the end of Q1 of this year or even and into Q2, we would really start to see the effects of the tariffs on the US economy. Turns out a bunch of studies, surprise, surprise, Consumers pay 90% of the cost of tariffs. You and I mean, surprise, surprise, right? I mean, I've always known that. Maybe we all always haven't thought that way, that somehow some corporations are just generous and they're going to absorb those tariff costs and not pass it to the consumer. I'm involved in multiple products that we've done over the years that are on the US market via my one of my businesses, and uh our our products are affected by these tariffs and we have to pass that cost off to consumers. So turns out studies show that consumers pay at least 90% or more of these tariffs. But it is starting to affect the US economy. Lots and lots of companies this year talking about raising prices again and attributing that to tariffs and continued inflation. So that's interesting how that's impacting the economy. And I think it will continue to do so. And it will be interesting to see how this narrative, how this continues, because we're living in a bubble, you guys. And I'm going to talk about that from an economic standpoint. And I'm going to, you know, you guys, I'm very much, you guys know, I like to say things based on fact and truth, but I am going to pull out maybe my little tinfoil hat, my crystal ball here in a minute. And I want to talk about some economic, like sort of ideas and predictions that I have for this year, just kind of depending on what happens with elections and what happens with the globe. Because I think there's a lot of interesting things going on. I'd be remiss if I did not talk about the Epstein files today, you guys. I'm going to talk about it only briefly because a couple of weeks ago I addressed this pretty hard and heavy, but I am going to address this again because I think it's important. Folks, this could arguably be, the largest global scandal of our modern age. And no, I don't need to make the Epstein files about Donald Trump specifically. I hope the truth comes out in regards to that. All the truth, you guys. I think we should all want the truth, regardless of who, how, where, what, because this is a great evil of our age. And but for the last decade, you guys think about this, for the last 10 years, these files have been shrouded in darkness and redacted and protecting the evil and the rich and the powerful people across this world who have taken advantage of the innocent and the broken in ways that are so evil that you and I cannot even comprehend it. The truth is, you know what? The truth will set us free. We know that from the Bible. The truth will set us free. But the truth is going to come out. The Bible even says, like, what is done in secret will be made known. And those things that you do, and you got to be careful. Are you that same person behind closed doors? That your sin will find you out. This is grotesque evil beyond anything most of us can comprehend. And several people in Congress have said this. We must continue to demand the full transparency of this, the protection of victims, but the exposure of the perpetrators around the globe, not just here in the US, but around the world. We've got to get the truth to the bottom of this. And I encourage you guys, don't close your eyes on this. We keep being told we're done. We're not doing any more. We're not releasing any more files. Apparently, there's another 3 million files that haven't been released. We're done. We're not releasing any more files. We're not prosecuting anybody. The files don't exist. The files are on my desk. We have the files in these folders. This constant deception and disillusion, and then using other headlines, right, to distract us. And that can be all kinds of things. And we'll get into that in a minute. Wars and rumors of wars. The Bible says in the last days there'll be wars and rumors of war. We're now moving a second carrier fleet to the Middle East. There is a lot of belief based on air traffic and stuff like that it looks like we're probably going to be getting involved in a conflict in Iran. Very, very, very possible. We need to pray for our leaders, for our nation, for the world, as we look at the political chess moving and things going on around the world. And believe me, don't get me wrong, the great evil that exists in Iran, and how should we address that? I believe that God appoints the leaders of men for those kinds of purposes, and that perhaps God has appointed Trump for these kinds of purposes. And but those are still difficult things for us to swallow and accept at times. And of course, our great men and women in service. We need to be praying, you guys, for this stuff. And I think you guys noticed today, maybe my tone is a little bit different. I think I'm a little sober today, just as I've recognized in myself just how consuming all of this stuff has become, and needing to really step back and look at things from my faith and from a biblical and a worldview that is truthful and right, and not so, I guess you could say, just kind of enraged. I get at points where I feel like we're so deceived by our leaders, and here in Wyoming and even beyond, in the world, that I get kind of irritated and cooked up about some of that stuff. But I realize we've got to talk about this stuff, but we need to do it in a way that is beneficial and just truthful and trying to help each other, right? Trying to support each other. So obviously, we've got Ukraine and Russia trying to make peace. That those talks stalled this past week. We'll see what happens there. But I've got some good friends that have told me it looks like, probably within the next month, we're probably going to be into another conflict in the Middle East. So let's just be praying, you guys. I just want to encourage you guys. Let's be praying. Let's be thinking. Let's be loving our neighbors, supporting each other. Let's have the conversations. Let's do the things that are right for the people around us and affect the world that we're in. And do the best we can. So that's kind of a bird's eye view, you guys, on what's going on around the world in the U.S. Obviously, a lot of these topics, we'll be following these. I'll be doing these shows once in a while just to fill you guys in on where I stand on this stuff, what's going on. And now I'm going to pull out a little crystal ball. There's a lot going on that's pretty interesting to me in the U.S. economy, and the numbers and federal injections of billions of dollars, and so I've been studying this a little bit the past couple of weeks, and we are living, I think all of us know this, like kind of in our gut, that we are living in like the biggest bubble ever, right? Like something's got to give. We can't continue to have 2.5% inflation. We can't. Nobody can afford food right now. I mean, it's really, really difficult. It's really tough. But we look at Wall Street and what's going on in economics with the real job numbers and wages and housing costs and interest rates, how interest rates are almost unmoved no matter how much money we pump in the back door of mortgage securities, right? We pumped $200 billion into the back of mortgage securities this year already, and interest rates remain essentially unchanged. They blipped a little bit. And same thing with inflation and value of the dollar and all this stuff. So here's kind of I got this little thought crystal ball, and you guys can hold me to account on this at the end of the year. But here's kind of what I think may happen in the US economy. And I'm sort of, when it comes to like thought, I'm sort of like this outside of the box, like sort of just what do I think's really going on, and I like to try to share that with you guys. So it turns out, I don't know if you guys know this, but the feds have now injected another $55 billion year to date into various liquidity functions in banking and mortgages and stuff to try to prop up the systems, to try to keep things from collapsing. The problem is, the more money we pump in to try to keep things from collapsing, the harder we're going to fall. When this bubble bursts, it's going to be bad. And I've talked to a lot of people in the last week who kind of all agree with me. We kind of want the bubble to burst because it would help equalize so many of the things that are around us that are just so unequal, so distorted. Our market is so distorted. Our economy is so distorted. And it's being propped up by billions and billions and billions of federal dollars, tax dollars, to stop it from bursting or falling. And the problem is at some point, I was reading an article this morning before I did the show. The problem is now we're at a point where the system is showing that it can no longer function at all without these injections coming in. And word on the street is that the US government plans to inject 40 to 80 billion dollars a month this year to keep things from collapsing, maybe the housing market, things like that. But what would happen is the cost of goods would go down, and the cost of housing would go down, and all these things would go down. And yes, there would be negatives to that. Absolutely. There would be a lot of people who are underwater, when it comes to home values and stuff like that. But boy, we keep propping this thing up the way we're doing. And again, I was reading this article this morning from some economists. They're like, you can't keep doing this without consequence, because the money being pumped in is no longer having an effect. It's not lowering interest rates. It's not lowering inflation. Nothing's, because risk is getting so great. And you can look at that. That's why gold is up. That's why silver is up. That's why precious metals are up, because these monetary systems that we have, and this is going on globally, are kind of on this teetering point. And so I was thinking about a couple of things. How long can this continue? And at what point will we perhaps see, for instance, institutional investors pulling out of the market, right? Pulling all of this money out of the market and going to other places. And here's kind of what I think. And, I'm no expert economist or anything, but this is kind of just my 2 cents, that I've got, which is about all I've got. So the Trump accounts are coming. And when those are opened on July 5th, we're going to see a massive injection of federal dollars and private dollars into Wall Street. By the way, you can listen to my talk on this issue. I believe that Trump accounts are not capitalism. I believe it's socialism. But I also believe that Trump accounts are strategically designed to continue this propping up that I'm talking about. They're strategically designed to inject Wall Street with billions and billions and billions of dollars to keep the system from bursting, or to keep it from collapsing. This is concerning to me, and here is why. So, first of all these companies giving $1,000 to newborns, right, when the Trump accounts are open. Remember, they're just investing in themselves. So wait, Joseph, what do you mean? Well, most of this money, from what I understand, is going to go into the S&P 500. So these companies, all this money that's going to go into these Trump accounts is going to the S&P 500 to prop up all of these major corporations, all these companies, these global companies, these national companies. And so these companies that are, Citibank, who's going to give $1,000 to every newborn, for their employees, they're investing just in themselves. They're putting $1,000 and they're investing it in themselves. But here's the concern I have. Depending on how the midterms go, well, actually, regardless of how the midterms go, at some point, institutional investors are going to pull all their money out. Because let's face it, we're going to put billions and billions and billions of dollars into these accounts. The institutional investors and those who get dividends and stuff, they're going to pull all of this money out. That's just what I think. I could be wrong. They're going to pull all this money out after it's been put in. My thought on this is it may not happen until after the midterm elections. And here's why. Well, if Democrats win the midterm elections, the institutional investors can all pull out. And of course, we can blame Democrats for the collapse of the US market. I don't know if it'll happen. Again, I can't tell the future, but the indicators are there that something is about to happen. I think regardless, we're going to see the institutional investors cash out at the end of the year, regardless of the result of the election. And here's why. There's all this money being put in. Why not pull it out and move it around and reinvest it? Pull it out, let the market crash, and then put it back in. just a thought I've got. Maybe you guys post below if you guys have got some other thoughts on this. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. This is just kind of what I see in the economic indicators and things like that. Is, you know, at some point something's got to give, because the American people can't continue this, can't continue to foot this bill. I mean, we're struggling, right? You guys, most of us are struggling. So that's kind of, I'm going to wrap up this show today. Hope you guys have enjoyed this show. I'm going to post below. And so if you're on Rumble, Facebook, or YouTube, you'll be able to see this link. I'm posting a couple of our campaign surveys below. Let me see. I'm going to go ahead and also see if I could pull up real quick if I've got some of these links to the Wyoming legislature. So if you guys want to watch what's going on in the Wyoming legislature, you guys could do that. Yeah, here it is. I got this link right here. I'm going to go ahead and post this below the show as well. So what else is going on in the show? So I hope you guys enjoyed this today. I know it was a little bit of a different tone. I realized that I've kind of got sucked in a little bit, and I had to reset myself today when it comes to the way I talk about what's going on in the world, because my heart is in a place towards God and towards faith first, and it's easy to get sucked into all of this. And so I hope you guys were encouraged today by the message, and of course, just a brief overview of what the heck is going on in the world. But so what's coming out on the show tomorrow and Friday? So glad you asked. Tomorrow and Friday, I'm just going to say the show is about we're paying for what? I'm actually going to just go over probably some of the more just things that are in the Wyoming state budget for the next 2 days. I'm going to just talk about the things that we all pay for that, this has got to stop, you guys. It's got to stop at some point. The truth is we don't need $11 billion to run this state for 2 years. That's the truth. How we cut that and what we cut, I guess, is the real big question. There is so much stuff in there that I just want to see gone. It should be privatized. You know what? That organization, that board, that commission, that whatever could be privatized. It does not need to be something that's paid for by taxpayers in Wyoming. And there's a lot of that, you guys. And it's a few thousand here and 10,000 there and $500,000 here and $1 million over there. And it's just all over the place, you guys. So we're going to talk about that the next 2 days. Anyways, with that, God bless you guys. Have a great day. I've got to get to work. And I will talk to you guys later. Take care. Bye now. I think I'll play, in the kind of the tone of this show. I think I'll close the show out with our outro, and then I'll probably play Love Them More, just kind of to wrap out the tone of this show today. Take care, everybody. God bless.
That's today's episode of Wyoming Beyond the Fence Line with Joseph Kibler, candidate for Wyoming governor in 2026. If this mattered to you, share it, stay engaged, and keep asking hard questions. Be something different. Visit Joseph4wy.com for more information.
Sun up shining on a gravel drive, granddad's coffee in a styrofoam cup. Says, boy, this world will tell you keep what's yours, but that ain't how we were brought up. We bow our heads at the table, thank the Lord for the food and the fight, 'cause loving folks who love you back is easy, but that ain't walking in the light. Love your neighbor, mow his yard when he's hurting. Love your brother when he's slamming your door. Love a stranger when your pride says ignore him. Love the bitter heart twice what you did before. You can love your friends If you really want to shake this world for heaven, love your enemies more. Yeah, love your enemies more. She's got a Bible with a cracked leather spine, highlighter on every other page. Says turn the other cheek, ain't just a slogan. It's a narrow road you gotta pave. We pass the plates and the casseroles, fix a porch where the storm goes through. When they curse your name, you hit your knees, say, Father, bless them like you do. Love your neighbor, mow his yard when he's hurting. Love your brother when he's slamming your door. Love a stranger when your pride says ignore him. Love the bitter heart twice what you did before. You can love your friends on Sunday morning, but Jesus taught a different kind of war. If you really want to shake this world for heaven, love your enemies more. Yeah, your enemies more. She's got a Bible with a cracked leather spine, highlighter on every other page. Says turn the other cheek, ain't just a slogan. It's a narrow road you gotta pay.
You pass the plates and the casseroles, fix the porch when a storm rolls through. When they curse your name, you hit your knee,
Say, Father, bless them like you do.